Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to rate your most controversial wine opinions. We have done several videos before where I mostly focused on just a few controversial wine topics that I have come across over the course of my wine career, which I just realized spans 20 years. Wow, time flies. But quite regularly, you also share your own opinions in the comments section. And very often, the topics you bring up are simply too complex for a short answer. So I asked you to share some of your most controversial wine opinions, and today I am going to give my take on them, rating them as reasonable, questionable, indeed controversial, or straight down insane. So if you took part in the conversation of my previous post, chances are great we will tackle your opinion today. Shall we? I was really impressed because we received more than 100 comments in less than 1 week. So of course I cannot tackle them all, so let's just start with the first one. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc drinkers don't like wine. I will go straight ahead and say that this is insane. I love New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, and the great examples from New Zealand are absolutely amazing, and I love wine as well. So I am living, breathing example that that's not true. Madeira wine and Porto wine are top tier. Reasonable and absolutely true, nothing controversial here. Only wine stored under floor or vial is worth drinking. And then there's a question mark, so I don't know. I will say this is insane because there are great examples worldwide with amazing wines that have not been aged under vial or floor. And, those are still worth drinking. So this is just an insane comment. Terroir is real in broad strokes, climate, region. But the mystical soil flavor signature marketed by wineries is not reliably detectable in chemical analysis or blind tasting. The main point of this argument is absolutely reasonable, and I will specifically tackle this topic in one of my upcoming podcast interviews with Professor Alex Meltman, Professor of Geology Alex Meltman. He asked a question that you answered through all this hour, because his question was, can you taste the soil in the wine?
Okay.
And he did not know that you were my next guest.
No, but it's a very good question, and nothing wrong with the question, and it's right up my street.
Make sure to watch that video once it is out. I think it will be in a couple of months though. Wine needs to be enjoyable at release. It can get better with age. But, in quotation marks, it needs time can be an excuse for unbalanced wine. Reasonable, absolutely true. I will support this claim always. The notion that wine somehow is of bad quality or unacceptable quality during its release or first years of its life, it's just wrong. Great wine will be great when it is young, and great wine will be also great when it is getting older and at older stage as well. So let's move to the next one. If wine is meant to age 10 more years, wine YouTubers, I'm looking at myself now, need to stop taste testing them against other wines that are meant to be consumed now, then act surprised when the famous but too young wine loses the blind. Super controversial. I just said it addressing the previous comment. Wine is great and should be great upon its release. Bad wine will be scored badly when it is young, when it is mid-age, and when it is getting older. So here, it is not the issue that great wine was young and therefore it was scored lower. Here, it is either the issue of the taster, who maybe cannot pick up the slight differences, of a younger, maybe more powerful, more structured wine, or it is the issue of the wine. And indeed, it is not as good as maybe we are led to believe. Pinot Noir is an inferior grape variety and wildly overrated and overpriced. Wrong and insane. It cannot be inferior grape variety because it has been with us for several hundreds of years, and there is a reason it has persisted with us, with human beings. However, I do know people who have honestly and openly stated that they are not fan of Pinot Noir, and that is fine, and that is their opinion and their right to enjoy and drink the wines that they prefer themselves. You know, drink what you like. All right, so the next one, I have put several comments together in a group. So maybe initially these comments will seem to you as they are not alike, but they are really very similar in one specific point of view. Let's see. So the first one goes, the easiest way to size up the quality of a wine shop selection is to look at its German selection. Another one goes, German reds are the new Bordeaux. The best Spätburgunders can rival the best Burgundies. Absolutely reasonable. Australia is criminally underrated. The oldest Grenache, Marsanne and Shiraz wines in the world. World-class Riesling, Chardonnay, Semillon, Pinot, Grenache, Cabernet, Shiraz. Next one goes, nobody has yet to match France in the wine game. I know several people who would very strongly agree with that. Burgundy prevails. I have had many wines from around the world, but today I don't even look outside of Burgundy anymore. And to ice the cake, it must have a cork. People, passion, and pinch of craziness is required. CDP, in this case it is Châteauneuf-du-Pape, is great value and quality that no one ever profiles or compares to other regions. At best you get it in Grenache tasting. Bandol is similar, Northern Rhone to a degree. YouTubers, wine critics alike ignore, except for Clos du Pape and Beaucastel for some reason. So those are two really well-known wine producers in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. I do love them as well. So altogether, in these comments, I don't see anything that controversial, and let me explain why. We all tend to fall in love in certain wine style, grape varieties, winemaking regions, and we will always support wine region or country that we are coming from. So that is only natural. And in that love, we will always feel that other people around us maybe don't pay enough attention or don't share the same passion as we do. I almost feel similarly with the band The Who. I constantly feel they are underrated because I cannot find people who would share the same passion and love for them, and they're amazing. This, however, starts to become controversial if, in pursuing our love for our specific winemaking region, grape variety, or wine style, we start to bash other winemaking regions, other grape varieties, and other wine styles. So in general, I would say that all of these opinions that we had a lot in our comment section, they're not really controversial, they're very reasonable, they're very human-like, and I understand the feeling, but we should remain respectful towards other winemaking regions, winemakers in general, and other tastes as well. So let's move to the next one, which says, drink what you like, in brackets, is the most anti-small artisanal wine production message out there and just equates to drink what's available and don't feel bad about it. I will try to be as kind as possible addressing this comment. I will just say it is insane and it is wrong in so many levels. First of all, whoever made this comment, they took this drink what you like as a personal attack towards artisanal winemakers. And it is not. Just seconds ago, we talked about people enjoying Châteauneuf-du-Pape, liking or not liking Pinot Noir. We discussed Germany rivaling the best winemaking regions of France. And we discussed fortified wines such as Madeira and port wine. And we also discussed wines that are aged under flor or voile. None of those opinions are anti-artisanal wine. They are expressions of personal taste and curiosity. And that is exactly the point. Drink what you like does not mean never explore. Drink what you like does not mean only drink what is available in the supermarket shelves. Drink what you like actually means that no one should feel embarrassed of what they like in their wine glass. I started my wine journey by enjoying off-dry Gewürztraminer. I pretty early liked New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc with generous amount of residual sugar, if I'm being honest. And my palate developed and evolved, and it still develops and evolves. That's how almost everyone enters the wine world. We have to start somewhere. And by making people feel bad about what they enjoy, what they drink, we only further alienate them from the wine world instead of bringing them in. I would even argue that comments like these hurt artisanal and small family-owned winemakers even more, because by saying that what you drink is wrong or your taste is bad, people just want to leave the wine world altogether. They never will want to explore the wine world further. They will never want to go and taste Jura or, I don't know, Jerez or, small grower champagne estates. The bottom line of this comment is that it is not only insane, it is elitist. So let's move to the next comment. I think the wine rating on 100 points should be eliminated. Ooh. I prefer the WSET rating because it is most objective. It is insane. I don't understand why different wine judging and scoring systems cannot coexist. For you, it makes no sense. For other people, it also makes no sense. For others who understand it and who follow, it makes sense. So it really depends. We are different, each and every one of us. And one person prefers 3-star rating system, other person prefers Tre Bicchieri, other person prefers 10-point system, 20-point system, 15-point system, 3-glass system, 100-point system, and they can all coexist. Let's move to the next one, which also tackles the issues of the points. Luca Maroni, 99-point wine. I feel like they're lower towards the 80 points. I will say that this is questionable. The reason for it, we always talk that you should find your wine critic or your wine taster with whom your taste aligns. So maybe for this person specifically, Luca Moroni says 99 points and you think it is 80, and for you that's fine. And for another, Luca Moroni says 99 and they taste it and they say, yeah, it is a 99-point wine and I like it and I enjoy it. So I think the honest point here would be that you don't have the same taste as Luca Moroni. I think some of the wine experts are biased by labels. They can smell 100 descriptors and rate a wine very good or outstanding just because it says Champagne or Barolo on the label, even if everyone else thinks it's crap. Controversial. I have been to some of the wine judging and scoring competitions. All the wines are tasted blind. So we cannot be biased by the labels because we simply don't see the labels. It is true that we know what we are tasting. So maybe there would be like 20 Barolo or 20 or 30 champagnes in front of us, and then we would know that we are tasting champagne against champagne, not champagne against Cremant or Cava or whatever. And within that category, you would see that there are certain wines that are golden medals, 94, 95 plus. Then there are certain wines that are receiving silver medals, then there are certain wines at bronze, and there are Barolos that do not get any score at all. So it is not that it is Barolo or that it is champagne. It is that this specific wine within its category is scored highly because it stands out within this category. That's one thing. Of course, there are these individuals, wine critics, that sometimes receive the samples and then they score the wines knowing what the wines are. But in general, I would like and I would want to trust wine critics and what they do. And of course, we never know what is happening, behind closed door when there's one wine critic and one wine in front of them and how they score it. So the next one. Most reds benefit from being chilled. Reasonable. I cool my red wines sometimes Reasonable. I cool my red wines as well. I actually prefer them slightly chilled, and let's be honest, our room temperature is not the same what it was 50 years ago. Next one, restaurant wine pricing is built on consumer ignorance. If they listed the retail price next to their markup price, all restaurant wine sales would plummet. Somewhat reasonable, somewhat questionable and controversial, if I am being honest. Of course, there are certain restaurants whose pricing strategy is somewhat questionable, I will agree, but usually those restaurants are being honest. We are working only for tourists, for customers that we do not expect coming back, so one-time visitors, and this is how they make their money. But we cannot expect for restaurants to have the same markup as brick-and-mortar retailer, and we cannot expect for brick-and-mortar retailer to have the same markup as online wine shop. In the restaurant, we are having wine served to us chilled from a wine fridge in a polished wine glass. We are sitting at a clean table. We might even have candle or flower on the table. It is being served by a nice person who talks about the wine, who maybe explains us the wine. We have music. We have ambience, we have nice comfortable furniture, then we stand up, we go to the restroom, we have toilet paper, we have hand washing soaps, we have towels, and in the best restaurants we would also have a hand cream. All of that cost money. And if you are enjoying wine on a terrace, in certain regions and countries, getting that terrace permit can be very expensive and time-consuming. I am not even discussing that retailer chain stores will have much greater negotiation power than a single restaurant will do because they move greater volumes. So when I go to the restaurants, I never compare the price of the wine in the restaurant's wine list with the price in the retail shelf. Those are two completely different concepts. So I will say this is very controversial. Let's move to the next one. While wine conventions and tasting events are fun, you cannot judge a truly great wine from a single tasting pour. Great wines require and deserve an entire evening to slowly savor and experience the wine unfold. Reasonable, I completely agree with it. I think the idea of these wine fairs is more to introduce you with the general style of the wine and maybe what they offer altogether and how this wine developed and where you are at. And of course, if you're a true wine lover and you did enjoy what you saw, the short preview, you will come back to that wine and you will purchase it, and then you can sit back in your nice couch and enjoy the wine through the course of the evening. Anything above $40 per bottle, and you're just paying for reputation and marketing. Well, there is a certain truth to it. I don't think it is the $40 mark here. And I will take the lowest hanging fruit here, champagne. We are harvesting grapes by hand in one of the most expensive agricultural lands in the world, in the climate which is highly unpredictable. We are having 2 fermentations. We are aging that wine for around 2 years and plus in the cellars, and we are bottling that wine in a very expensive bottle. So sparkling wine bottle usually tends to be more expensive than still wine bottle. Of course, there are always exceptions. So it is only natural that the prices are higher for these wines. And because these wines are coming from such an unpredictable climate, 1 year winemaker wins because the climate and weather is very generous and kind, and other year the winemaker loses. So it is ups and downs. So it is not as straightforward as one might think. And then I have another question. When did marketing on its own as a concept become bad? It is good Because of the marketing, I have discovered so many great producers. One that comes to my mind immediately is this fabulous winemaker, Juan Carlos Sancha in Rioja, who makes wines from indigenous, rare, rediscovered grape varieties. The value is amazing. And if I wouldn't have been to the wine fair where he was invited, that is part of the marketing, I would have never discovered it. So I don't understand why we always keep bashing marketing as a concept in general. That's fine. We would never know all those small artisanal producers if it wasn't for certain marketing. So let's move on. Oh, very questionable, very questionable. American-made wine deserves to be thrown down the drain. So before I answer, is it American-made wine or is it American wine? Because there are a lot of wines in Europe as well made by Americans. Anyway, completely insane, of course, that's not true. There are many hybrid wines, especially whites, that are better than their vinifera counterparts. I will say this is questionable. I think this topic might require a video on its own, but the simple explanation will be that we don't know or we don't have yet enough experience. With vinifera, we have several hundreds of year experience when it comes to growing them and when it comes to making the wines. And with hybrids, we simply don't have that. And this is one thing where I think there is a lot of marketing being invested to make us think that they are better. I don't think that they are yet there. They might get there one day for sure. But at this moment, I think altogether we lack experience in the grape varieties yet. Honestly, my most controversial wine opinion is that I'd have another glass tells me more than half the tasting notes I read. Reasonable, it makes sense in my books, absolutely. I have told you several times that one of my favorite ways to evaluate wine comes from one of Hugh Johnson's written books. He said that the first bottle that is finished, that is empty, is the best wine. And I, in fact, have made a video, which was quite challenging to film, but I made a video where I tasted several wines that I like with my friends, and then we rated which bottles were the first ones to finish. So if you want, you can go and watch that video because it actually talks about this very idea, and it's very, very reasonable. Ingredients and fining agents should be required to be on the label either as a list or QR code that leads you to the web page with them listed. People should be able to find out what they are drinking without hiring a private investigator. I believe wine quality overall would go up. In general, nothing controversial with this idea. We indeed should be able to know what we are drinking. And I think starting with 2024, at least in European Union, you are required to have ingredients on the label, either printed as a list, as this commentator said, or via QR code. However, there is one part of this comment that I think is more controversial, and that is the idea that wine would somehow become of better quality if we would have those ingredients listed. I am not so sure about it. In general, I would argue that wine quality is really high nowadays. We have fewer and fewer wines with faults, fewer and fewer wines with certain taints, and off flavors. What concerns me though is growing assumption that any additive is inherently bad. Let's take sulfur dioxide, for example, which I think is one of the most misunderstood additive in the wine. I believe it is one of the most important tools to protect wine from various bacterial spoilage and oxidation risks. And this pushing towards lower sulfur dioxide additions in the wine has led towards increase in certain faults in wine, let's say mousiness. Mousiness is closely linked with reduced levels of SO2. That is to remind you that additives are not always bad. They have reason and they have purpose in wine. If we are going to start judging wine by how short the additive list is in the wine, winemakers will become very creative, and what they can, for example, start to do is to use other manipulations with the wine. Let's say vacuum distillation, let's say reverse osmosis. And in my books, that is more manipulative than adding SO2, than adding tartaric acid to, increase acidity, or to add monoproteins. And you don't have to display or inform, the consumer about it. So that second part of this comment is slightly controversial in my view. Red wine and cheese go well together. Red wine, cheese, and heavy metal go together fantastically. Reasonable, of course, I would know. Well, the only thing I can think of is how probably worldwide there are only 6 wineries that can sell their juice for $300. The rest talk about marketing. We keep talking about marketing. Not to drop names, but Opus One, my world, I've had $60 stuff that rivals it. Questionable, if only that this person is referring to the 6 wineries, which I don't know which ones this person is talking about. And I guarantee you the reason they can sell their wine for $300 is because of marketing, for sure. I feel like Burgundy is not worth the price that are charged for them, at least not here in the United States. Domaine Leroy 2011 Premier Cru for $10,000. 91 point wines for over $1,000 a bottle is just idiotic, and you can get much better here in United States for quality. I don't care how rare it is or that there are not a lot of it, of the wine. If I made wine from grapes in my backyard, I would be terrible, but could I charge $1,000 per bottle because I wouldn't make a lot of it? Well, of course, the examples that are mentioned here in this comment are extreme. Burgundy is not all 4-digit or 5-digit numbers, and naturally, and it is not only about how little you make. Of course, that is one part of it, but also the quality, and the prestige and availability of these wines, of course, also play an important role. To be honest, I have also had my fair share of, thoughts about Burgundy and their prices, but the only people to really blame in this are us, because we are the ones who are willing to pay that price, and Burgundy would be silly to not take, the money that has been given to them. And of course, if it is not the winemaker who does it, then it is the intermediaries that, support the price inflation. I do understand that there is some pain. For me, the same. I will say that this is questionable because there are still a lot of good value. I don't want to say great value, but good value Burgundy available. And we just have to look beyond these really great names that were mentioned here. Wine critics, sommeliers, scholars, educators, YouTubers, influencers are responsible for current wine crisis. While I understand where this is coming from, I cannot completely agree with it. So I understand the idea that, the wine professionals are blamed for wine being too elitist, to, excluding the regular people and making wine too mystique and too complex that it feels almost impenetrable, the wine world altogether. However, wine is an alcohol, and we have to understand that currently there are different issues at play in the wine world, and it is much more complex situation. And it is not only wine professionals and YouTubers and influencers and writers that are to blame. Maybe it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, that we could talk about it, but nowadays, no, the process that we currently see is way more complex than this. So, controversial opinion. I will happily drink any white wine under screw cup. Me too. Cork is unnecessary for whites. Cork is also unnecessary for any red consumed under 5 years from bottling. The Europeans will scream, but it's tradition. I live in the new world, so tradition has less importance. It's the quality of what's in the glass, and I don't want cork taint. Studies show aged whites under screw cup retain freshness over whites under cork. I will say that it is quite reasonable, but altogether there's a lot of extremes in this comment. There are really top quality corks, natural corks made that can act the same way as screw cup. So the studies that this is referring to, it is not as straightforward because it really depends on the cork. And the one thing that we have issue with cork, of course, we talk about cork taint, that has diminished in, percentage greatly over the last 10, 20 years. But the one thing I want to mention is the consistency. So with screw cup, there is much higher, greater consistency that the wine will be fine, while with natural cork, it is slightly less, because while the cork could look completely sound and fine from outside, inside there might be, some issues, some ruptures and some, breaks that actually will also impact the wine while it is aging. So altogether, reasonable. Some of the extreme ideas of this specific comment, questionable. Wine from classic wine regions are overhyped and are garbage in terms of price to quality ratio. Wrong, insane. I will say Loire Valley is classic. It is definitely not garbage. It offers amazing quality to price ratio. Rhone is classic. Rioja is classic. Jerez, Douro is classic. They offer great value price ratio, and it is not garbage. And I will give you one better. Bordeaux is as classic as one can get. And I think this region offers amazing quality and amazing value when it comes cent percent for sure. Absolutely. So insane. Oh, and this is it. We're done with the comments. So thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you for putting yourself out there and commenting, and let me know in the comment section below of this video if you disagree with some of my views or my opinions. And meanwhile, make sure to watch this video next.